This week is about renewal. We are always changing, and consciousness is forever challenged to become aware of where we are. The stuck consciousness clings to obsessions and repeated stories and is not open to new terrain. There is a reluctance to take a risk, and it protects itself from realignments and demands that changes make in the daily structure of our lives. The new is the expression of renewal, or what Harrison describes as keeping open, an archetypal process that responds to the soul's need for movement and fresh engagements. This is an excerpt from a book titled Art as Medicine by Sean McNiff. And I thought that passage was quite speaking of this week's astrology. So welcome to your weekly astrology forecast. My name is Shauna. And as always, I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you, the week of April 1st. And I have 3 tips for you to make the most out of this week. So, first thing that's happening this week is the planet Mercury will conjunct Neptune. And so we've already had this transit before, so it may sound a little bit familiar. This is because Mercury has been retrograde, and it's basically, let's say Neptune is here, and then Mercury is going forward in the zodiac, and then it conjuncts Neptune, and then it keeps going, stations retrograde, and then comes back to conjunct Neptune, keeps going back, and then now, as of last week, Mercury has station direct, so it's moving forward again. So this is the 3rd time in the last month or so that we've had Mercury conjunct Neptune. What does that even mean? Mercury is a symbol of our thought process, communication, and intellectual thought. Mercury retrograde is known for being a time of review, reflection, and internalizing one's thought process. So that really just means contemplation in essence. When Mercury conjuncts Neptune, there can be a high amount of creativity, a high amount of inspiration, but it can also feel kind of like you're swirling in a whirlpool, or like you get, I think I used this metaphor the other week, where you get like tossed by a wave, or you get thrown into the water, and you can't really, for like that split second, you can't decipher which end is the surface or which end is the depths. And I love this quote that I read because it speaks of sometimes consciousness can cling to obsessions and repeated stories. And I think this is something that can happen when we have a transit of Neptune, whether that's Neptune to a personal planet in your birth chart, or a planet in the sky that's transiting Neptune. There can be this like intuition, and the collective unconscious and energy is so heavy, and it can sometimes be not just creative and inspirational, but it can be delusional as well, or illusional. You can see things in a different light. It often feels like there's a paradox as well. So all of that to say that this week is high on creativity, but not super high on practicality. So just keep that in mind. The other part of this week is we have a new moon in Aries. And so this very much adds another layer of that Neptunian kind of energy, where there is a softening of boundaries, a softening of practicality. New moon is a time when there's new ideas germinating, when it's a more internal and reflective kind of feel. So the new moon is exact on Friday the 5th at 1:50 a.m. Pacific time. So what this means is, especially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're in the dark of the moon. And the dark of the moon is a time of going inside, of reflecting, cleansing, A lot of people say that the full moon is a time to release, but that's actually not true. The full moon is the symbol of celebration and abundance, whereas the dark moon is when it is a time to cleanse, to release, to let go, and to make new space for the new cycle ahead. And I'm actually going to be speaking about the dark moon phase in depth in a few. I'm going to make a little video series about it because it's a really interesting topic. It's a very potent time to make space for new things and to tap into your inner wisdom. So beginning of the week is really heavily focused on reflection and listening to your gut, listening to your intuition and little things that are bubbling up for you. And the other thing that happens this week that sort of helps us in all of this very soft and floaty kind of vibes this week is Mercury will sextile Saturn. And so sextile is an opportunity aspect. It shows where there's opportunities for us to tap into the energy if we choose. Mercury, of course, is communication, thought process, linear thinking, even planning to a certain extent. And then Saturn is about structure. Saturn is about commitment. It's about devotion. Saturn is the boundary maker. And boundaries can help us feel safe and secure, or they can also feel limiting as well. Because this is a sextile, I see this as a way to tap into things, to like tap into resources. The one thing that I do want to note that I'll talk about more next week is that we are approaching the Sun square Saturn, which can bring up in a more direct way issues of power and authority, and along with that comes other Saturn themes of boundaries and having autonomy over yourself, autonomy over your life. So that happens next week on the 10th. So we're already building into that. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because that is a larger transit, especially since Saturn is sitting with Pluto, which is about authenticity, death, and rebirth, and really being honest with yourself, and the South Node, which is about letting things go, but also tapping into inner resources as well. So again, talk about that next week. But all of that to say that I think that this is a highly inspirational and creative week. It might feel kind of like things are a little bit intangible, or like there's a lot of moving pieces. Because the other part of this is Mercury and Neptune are square to Jupiter. So Jupiter expands things. It tends to show where there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of options, especially right now. So if you're tracking this in your birth chart, I would look at where you have Pisces, which is Mercury, Neptune, and then where you have Jupiter, which is in Sagittarius. So there's going to be areas where there may be a lot that's changing, or where there's a lot of possibilities and openness. So 3 tips for you to make the most out of this week. Tip number 1 is to go with the flow. And this, like nearly always when we have a Neptune transit, it does not benefit you to try to control things right now. Because there is, especially like the Neptune and then the new moon, there's so much that we don't know right now. And so best to go with the flow, to be curious, and to explore. Tip number 2 is to act from inspiration. And this always is good advice for a new moon, but especially when we have a new moon in the sign of Aries. This new moon, I don't think I mentioned, it's exact at 15 degrees of Aries. And so Aries is about acting from inspiration, acting from passion, acting from a gut instinct, but also where there's like a level of excitement there, and that motivation, that like first spark of action, that is Aries energy. So definitely tap into that, especially over this weekend, I would say too. But we tend to already feel the beginnings of the new moon in the days before it, but it's kind of like you're feeling it and there's not yet the space, or I think even the physical vitality to act on it until after the new moon has been exact. So that's tip number 2, act from inspiration. Tip number 3 is to find short-term actionable items. And so I say that because Also, Aries is about the start, the initiation. It's a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are about starting. It's a fire sign. Fire signs are about passion. And so Aries energy really benefits from doing things that you can actually take tangible, real action on, and that there's that there's an immediate payoff. It keeps that inspiration going. So I would, and I think also because we have the Mercury Neptune and things don't feel super firm and stable this week. I would say that also even because we're in the week following Mercury stationing direct. So Mercury is moving forward through the zodiac. It is direct moving forward, but it's also moving back over an area where it has been retrograde. So we could take that as a symbol of you're moving forward, you're thinking, and thought process is clear and you're making decisions, but you're also going back over territory that you've been thinking about. So there may still be things that sort of need to be laid out and to be ironed out, so to speak. So find short-term actionable items. That's going to be super satisfying. And let's pull a card. So as I'm pulling this, you can think of something specific that you want to know, or situation in your life that you would like more guidance on. Or you can just breathe and have it be a general symbol for the week. Oh, I love this card. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful card. So this is the Nine of Pentacles. This card is about abundance. It's about luxury and having all of your material needs met. And then there's kind of like a little secret ulterior message in here as well that I'll talk about in a second. But I just want to show you there's the Pentacles, Nine of Pentacles. Pentacles are about earth and matter and tangible things that you can hold and touch. It's about the structure of your life. Literally, it can be about money or finances. Nine is a really beautiful number because it symbolizes the end of a cycle, and it symbolizes like the full expression of something. And so that's why I would also see this card as associated with abundance aside from the imagery here, but the 9 is like a culmination of something. So how I would relate that to this week is, maybe there's a culmination of something that's happening for you. I don't like with this card, I think there's a culmination, and sometimes when there's a culmination, there's also like an ending and a beginning. I don't necessarily get that from this card, although that may be the case for you. The other piece of this card too is she has this really sweet bird here. And I have heard some say that this card can be a sort of like a warning to pay attention to how much you're investing in luxury and the financial security and things like that. And then where there may be a piece of you that needs to still be responsible to someone else or to something and to be held captive to something. And I think that, we always have to make certain sacrifices. Maybe there's a certain lifestyle that you desire that requires a certain sacrifice, or a certain trade-off maybe is a better word. But I think it's interesting that the bird is captive here. So it is tamed. So this card is, it's not like a wild feminine energy, it's a refined feminine energy. I wouldn't necessarily say that she's a tame woman, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. So definitely a focus around material comfort, luxury, and how it is that you balance that with freedom versus sacrifice. captivity versus wildness. That's what's coming up there. So curious what you really notice in that card, what resonates with you, how you're doing this week. And that is your horoscope for the week. If you want to stay in touch with me, follow me on Instagram. And also thank you so much to all of the people who have signed up on my Patreon. Patreon is a place where you can show your love and appreciation for the videos that I make. You can also sign up for a monthly Learn Astrology video where we get to interact and talk about things. And then I have opportunities for mentorship with me on there as well. So if you want to find that, you can go to patreon.com/Neofeminine Astrology. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you for all of the love, regardless of being on Patreon or not. I love hearing how you're doing and how these videos resonate with you. So wishing you a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.